What is your name and what office are you running for?
My name is Ashley Salvador and I'm running for Ward Métis.
Why are you running?
Yeah, so running for re-election for Ward Métis. First and foremost, I really believe in our city. You know, Edmonton is home for me. I've lived here my entire life, and I believe that Edmonton can be a city where everyday people can build extraordinary lives. Over the past 4-year term, we have of course been through some very challenging times together. We navigated a pandemic, an inflation crisis, and social issues and consequences that followed from that we're still feeling today. You know, having navigated that difficult time through our communities, I want to continue serving. You know, I think we're at an interesting point right now where Edmonton is experiencing a lot of growth, right? People are choosing Edmonton. We've had 130,000 people move here in just the last 3 years alone. And that growth, of course, is exciting. It's wonderful that people are choosing Edmonton, but it also comes with some challenges. We need to make sure that we are providing enough housing, enough affordable housing. We need to make sure that our city services are keeping up with that growth. Things like public transit, our libraries, our rec centers, and just those basic city services that people expect their city to take care of, like our snow clearing and our park maintenance. You know, I'm also incredibly passionate about making sure that Edmonton is not just great today, but is great for future generations. I have loved my time on council because we get to make decisions every single day that not only try to improve the lives of current residents, but are trying to build a more resilient, sustainable, affordable, and thriving future for decades to come.
What is your most recent job? Obviously council, but what was prior to that?
Yeah, so prior to being elected to City Council, I was working in the housing space. So I'm the founder of a local nonprofit here in Edmonton called Yeg Garden Suites. Founded it in about 2017, and it's a hub of information for people who are looking at building backyard suites. We worked with a lot of people who were trying to downsize and age in place, a lot of multi-generational families as well, or families who have a family member with a disability who wanted to live close by but still have some independence. Through that work, we realized how many barriers were in the way for people who were trying to build those types of homes in their own backyards. So did a lot of advocacy to previous city councils to ensure that more people could build, that process was smoother, so that we could ultimately build a city where everyone has housing options that meet their needs. Prior to that, I also worked with Alberta Municipal Affairs for a little bit in the housing space, the Office of Sustainability at the University of Alberta, and I also worked a really fascinating job when I was doing my master's degree in Waterloo. I worked with the City of Waterloo doing intergenerational and intercultural learning. So done a whole host of things, but all municipally focused in one way or another.
If you are re-elected, what would be your first priority to fix?
Well, of course, right after the election, we're moving into budget. So, of course, ensuring that the priorities of Edmontonians are reflected in that, and making sure that we're continuing that momentum around funding the core city services that Edmontonians rely on and expect. I would say continued focus around housing policies, making sure that we are both responding to growth and accommodating that growth in a good way, but being responsive to the concerns that we're hearing, particularly around some of our infill policies. We just had our 1-year review of the zoning bylaw renewal and have made some adjustments, but there's going to be a continued focus on that for me as well.
That bumps up my another question about infills. Where do you stand on infills and what is the path forward?
Yeah. Infill is a critical component of building a more fiscally and environmentally responsible city. Edmonton cannot continue sprawling outwards at the pace that we have been. It is incredibly expensive for cities to grow in that manner. You know, it adds thousands of linear kilometers of roadways, more roads to plow, more green spaces to maintain, new rec centers, new libraries, fire halls at the fringes of our city. So being able to grow in and up, not only is it fiscally responsible, but it also helps ensure that our existing communities have enough people to sustain our schools and our grocery stores and our amenities that we all love and rely on. And we've gone through a big process. We've modernized a 50-year-old bylaw that needed to be updated. It was a very large process, and our city administration undertook that. Now that we're just over a year in, seeing, what do these changes look like on the ground? How are they reflected in our neighborhoods? I do think there's opportunities for further refinements and further adjustments, particularly around mid-block multiplexes. I've heard specific concern about eightplexes when they're situated right in the middle of a block next to two smaller single-family homes. I don't hear as many concerns when it's on a corner lot, but those mid-blocks have been causing a lot of tension. So I was one of the councillors that did vote to reduce the eightplexes back down, just to try to moderate it and to maintain that support and momentum for infill.
How will you balance fiscal responsibility?
Yeah, so fiscal responsibility is, of course, present in every single decision that we make around the council table. Right now, we need to balance the pressures of growth with the fiscal realities that and constraints and pressures that we know Edmontonians are feeling across the board. You know, for example, during the pandemic, there were 2 years of 0 or near 0% tax increases. And while that provided some relief during a very challenging time, unfortunately, that kicked the can down the road on some of those fundamental investments that we know we need to make to sustain our city services. Because of that, we did see a fairly large tax increase following the pandemic. My goal going forward will be to ensure that we get to a more sustainable place. You know, I'm hearing from families, well, people across the board, young families just trying to get a start, seniors on fixed income, that affordability is top of mind. And of course, finding that balance between maintaining city services finding that balance between maintaining city services, but also keeping things relatively affordable. That's deeply important to me. As we go forward, we know that there are some structural budget issues that the city of Edmonton is facing. Part of that's because of the way we've grown. We've stretched our city services really thin. So growing in and up well over time help ensure we get to a more sustainable tax rate. But in the interim, we have made some significant moves. We reallocated about $120 million towards core city services this term. We've seen a $60 million reduction per year in order to try to find some savings. And we've also directed a new budget process where we're having each city department come in front of council to talk about all of their lines of business and the resourcing requirement associated with that, so that we can take a much more granular look at the financials of the organization, and that's coming up this term.
Construction along timelines are frustrating Edmontonians. What would you change, if anything, about how Edmonton plans and delivers these projects?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely hearing those frustrations as well. The overlapping nature of the construction projects we're seeing are making it challenging for people to get around and navigate our city. One of the things that I pushed for this past term is something called a dedicated renewal fund. Part of the reason that we're seeing these overlapping construction projects, from my perspective, is because we haven't adequately planned for sequential renewal of all of our assets and infrastructure. When we don't plan and phase those out in an appropriate way, we start to see things pile up and get into a pretty bad disrepair where they need to be fixed immediately. With the new dedicated renewal fund, it will take about 10 years to build up to a sustainable level, but that will make sure we have a line of sight as to how we're going to renew, revamp, and revitalize all of our existing assets. To put that into perspective, right now, there's a significant gap between what we should be spending on renewal and what we're actually spending. And that gap is about $470 million annually. And that has real implications for mature neighborhoods in particular. It means that a lot of our recreation facilities, our parks, our roads, our infrastructure are falling into pretty bad disrepair and are often at risk of closure because we haven't planned for that renewal. So I'm very hopeful that this new fund will help close that gap so that we can not only retain those assets, but ensure that we're doing reconstruction in our communities in a more palatable manner for Edmontonians.
How would you make Edmonton safer?
Yeah. So when we talk about safety, I always think about it in a very comprehensive sense, right? Everyone deserves to feel safe in their communities, and I do continue to hear that that's not a reality everywhere right now. I think about the folks that I've talked to in Ward Métis who have experienced break-ins, theft, vandalism, and petty crime right within their own neighborhoods, and that's unacceptable, right? I also hear about safety on transit. And oftentimes that's more related to inappropriate behaviors. So people who are not using transit for its intended purpose, whether it's open drug use or vandalism, or folks who might be struggling with mental health issues that need to be connected to appropriate social supports and services. So safety is a very broad topic for me. I always say we both need the right response at the right time from the right team, but we also need to take a proactive and preventative approach. So it's a both and conversation for me. Over the 4-year term, we have been investing in more of that responsive side and preventative. But on the responsive side, we've ramped up our peace officers on transit by about 73% to have a more visible and consistent presence in those transit spaces. We've started to increase outreach teams as well to be able to connect folks who are unhoused or experiencing substance use, mental health challenges with supports. And I know that EPS has also increased their resources on the transit side as well. So continued funding of that is critical. But I would also say we need to go upstream. We need to look at, of course, continued funding of affordable housing and supportive housing to make sure everyone has a safe place to call home. We've seen so many encampments popping up citywide over the last few years in our public spaces, our parks, and I would say beyond the downtown too. I think for a long time a lot of those challenges were concentrated more in the downtown core, but we're starting to see that citywide, and I know residents in Ward Métis are seeing that as well. So housing is an incredibly important part of the solution. I'd also say continued advocacy to the provincial government and federal government, because some of the safety challenges we're experiencing, the city cannot solve alone. There's a huge healthcare component here. The underfunding of our healthcare system, inadequate space for people who are struggling with addiction, and inadequate funding towards affordable and supportive housing. It's not leaving our communities with the help that we need. So having some independent voices around the council table who can effectively advocate for that help and articulate the help that we need is going to be a critical component over the next 4 years.
What do you think of the city's relationship with the province, and how should it be?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What do you think of the city's relationship with the province, and how should it be?
Yeah, the city has to be able to work with all orders of government. As I was just explaining, some of the biggest challenges we're seeing right now, whether it's around housing, some of the social issues we're seeing, or even just responding to growth and accommodating growth, we need all orders of government pushing in the same direction, right? And there's certain things that are within city control and city jurisdiction. There's certain things that aren't. So healthcare, the justice system, those are two examples where we need the province and federal government stepping up to support us. Finding ways to determine where's their common ground, where are there opportunities to push together, where is there alignment, absolutely taking advantage of those opportunities and working collaboratively towards solutions, that's important. At the same time though, we need voices who will stand up for Edmontonians, right? I think about some of the reductions we've seen to infrastructure funding. In 2011, we were receiving about $420 per person, and that's now down to $150. And that has real implications for accommodating growth. We are seeing rapid population growth, and we need adequate investment to keep that pace. So being able to stand up and articulate that and take it beyond a council conversation, bring Edmontonians in, bring the business community in, speak with a louder voice to clearly show the provincial government and the federal government that this is not only important for Edmonton's success, it's important for Alberta's success, because Edmonton is one of the economic engines in this province that deserves support.
What is your vision for Edmonton?
Yeah, so my vision for Edmonton is an Edmonton where everyday people can build extraordinary lives. And for me, that means everyone has access to the essentials. They have access to great park spaces, libraries, rec centers, good housing options that are affordable and suitable and meet their needs. Good transportation so they can get to where they need to go, so they can get to school, get to work, get to a job interview. And as a city, we have a fundamental role to play in setting that foundation for everyone to have the opportunity to thrive. So that is deeply important to me, and again, not only setting that stage today, but building in that resilience so that that opportunity will be available to everyone for decades to come.
If you are re-elected, what is one thing you want people to remember or know you accomplished at the end of your term?
Reflecting. Sorry, is that speaking about the past term or looking forward-looking?
Forward-looking.
Forward-looking, yeah.
Let's say,
Sure.
at the end of, if you get re-elected for this next term.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I want to continue the momentum that we've started to establish around affordable housing. I think about the need that's out there right now. There are 5,000 folks without a safe place to call home. And not only does that have an effect on the safety and well-being of our neighborhoods, it affects our economy as well. It affects local businesses, and it affects the vibrancy and health of our neighborhoods. So continued focus on affordable housing absolutely is important to me. I would also say, preparing for that growth, setting ourselves up for success today. I want to continue investing in public transit. I speak with people daily who would love to take transit, but don't often feel like it is as fast, frequent, and reliable as it needs to be to get them where they need to go. So we have an opportunity to really start increasing our service hours on public transit. We've invested in a brand new bus garage that will allow us to buy more buses and add to our fleet and really expand that service. That's something that I definitely want to be pushing on. And I would also say getting our city to a more fiscally responsible place is very important right now. Coming off of the very disruptive period of the pandemic, we need to start stabilizing. So I want to be able to lend my expertise to that, lend my experience to that. Having a background in urban planning, I also recognize that a lot of the budgetary constraints and challenges we're experiencing now are because of the way we've grown over the last few decades. So growing in a more sustainable manner, not sprawling outwards endlessly, is going to ensure that we set ourselves up for success.